Hey, economics students, I hope you're having a really nice Thursday, and hard to believe it's already Thursday. Man, does time fly when you're doing distance learning. Today we're going to keep on going with market failures. Today's going to be a shorter video. Um, just want to review yesterday very briefly and then move into the second example, really third example of how markets or why markets can fail at times. And then tomorrow we'll wrap it up with our last example of market failures. One thing I want to remind you, there is an Edpuzzle video about externalities. Of all the market structure failures, typically the one that students struggle with the most is the concept of externalities. So this is a really nice video that does a nice job of calmly sort of walking through and explaining exactly what a negative and a positive externality are. One thing though about the Edpuzzle video, it came to my attention pretty quickly that there is one of the questions I asked your opinion about, it's about cell phones. And I said, in your opinion, it's just a simple yes or no question. You don't even need to expand on it. And I guess somehow when I made the question and put the question in, there's like a rubric where I have to tell the computer what the right answer is. I thought I had set it up so that you would get credit no matter which way you answered it. Unfortunately, I set it up wrong. Essentially it's marking everyone's answer wrong, and it's an opinion question. And so like, really, how can an opinion question be wrong, especially if I'm not asking you to expand upon it? So don't freak out. I can't go in and fix it. I tried to go in and fix it. So when there is an opinion question, to ask whether or not you think cell phones are used too much when driving, if that's a good example of a negative externality, you just click yes or no, and it's going to mark it wrong either way. But I am interested to see if you find that a good example. I find it to, well, I'm not going to say. I am not going to say. I'll let you determine if you think it's a good example or not. So today we are going to go ahead and move in to the next type of market structure, or I'm sorry, market failure. And it has to do with the type of goods that a market can produce. Yesterday, we had talked about how markets can fail because of externalities, which are, I say they are unintended side effects. Economic, sort of the true kind of bare bones economic definition is more, a positive externality is when there is a third party who is getting a benefit from a good or a service that they didn't purchase. A negative externality is when there's a third party, meaning a person who is getting a cost for a good or a service that they did not, purchase. But again, an externality is when there is an unintended side effect. And really what we're kind of seeing right now is a huge externality. I didn't get into that yesterday, but uh, 2 days ago I showed the market failure of imperfectly competitive markets. And how is it that a lot of people want to buy milk right now, but when you go to the grocery store, there's no milk on the shelves. But at the same time, there's milk. Farmers are dumping tons of milk down, and down the drains because they can't get their milk to market. So there is a huge market failure there to take the resources and allocate them in a way that maximize people's wants and needs. And I explained that partly that's because we have imperfect market structures due to the desire to differentiate and so on and so forth. But a bigger issue is that our markets are set up to work just fine, but the government has come in and has said, okay, we have to shut restaurants down. We have to shut schools down. We have to shut all these things down that used to demand a lot of milk, a lot of cheese, a lot of chicken, so on and so forth. And the people now who used to supply that milk, cheese, and chicken, they have no one to supply it to. So for me to say that's a market failure because of imperfect competition, it's kind of accurate, but at the same token, it's also because there is, government intervention. But the reason there's government intervention is the concept of a negative externality. Because right now, if the government hadn't gotten involved and we were all free to make our own economic choices, we would all probably still be going to work unless we were sick. Because of the coronavirus, it has, and no one really knows for sure, like a 2 to 3, 1 to 2% mortality rate. And in particular, for people who are of a certain age or younger, the risk isn't quite as high. Most of us, when we think of our own individual cost of going to work and benefit of going to work, most of us would be working right now. Restaurants would be open, we'd be at schools, and there'd be, and so if we were all making our own individual economic choices, that is what would happen. However, what we aren't taking into account if we were to be going to work, going to schools, is that we would be risking the carrying of the coronavirus to people who might be at a more risk population, elderly people, people who are have compromised, um, immune systems that are compromised. Sorry about that. Um, and so the government has stepped in and said, no, no one, well, only essential people should be going to work, because if we all did what we thought was individually best for us, our entire society would be, would be devastated or would be hurt by this coronavirus. So if we don't have government intervention, we would have too many people in work. The quantity of people going to work would be higher than what is socially optimal. That's sort of kind of a theory behind economic theory about what the government's doing. They're trying to correct a negative externality in the face of a pandemic. And that then has caused all sorts of just economic things to go on. But okay, enough of that. Today's lesson is pretty straightforward. Another reason that markets sometimes fail, or I should say another way that markets do not allocate resources efficiently, is when markets are trying to produce public goods and services. Most markets do a wonderful job of producing what we call private goods. And that's what we're used to when we're going to the store and we're buying things. We usually buy private goods and services. A private good or services is any good or service that is both rival in consumption and is also exclusive or excludable. All right, and here's what that means. It means when one person consumes a good or service, it prevents another person from gaining utility, or at least a high degree of utility from that good or service. So I'm going to use the example of me going to McDonald's and eating a Big Mac. That's what I go to all the time. It brings me comfort. I don't know why. So I'm going to McDonald's. I'm going to take a big bite of a Big Mac. It's my Big Mac. If there is someone who's standing next to me that didn't buy the Big Mac, all right, I take a big bite out of it and maybe eat half of it. And then if I give that Big Mac to that person next to me who didn't pay for it, just for whatever reason, because I feel like being nice, that person is not going to get the same level of utility from the Big Mac. As I'm consuming the Big Mac, I am preventing the person next to me from having utility from that Big Mac that I'm eating. And even if I do give him, even if I am full and I give him like the last third of my Big Mac, that's nasty. Who wants to eat the last third of my Big Mac? How much utility is really in that? Ew, gross. Don't eat Mr. Quart's Big Mac. All right. So not that, and by the way, I would never not be able to finish a Big Mac. So let's just go there right now. But so again, that's what rival in consumption means. That when one person consumes something, it prevents somebody else from enjoying utility from that good or service. All right. Likewise, a private good is exclusive or excludable, meaning a company can prevent somebody who doesn't pay for a product from consuming it. All right. So at McDonald's can keep the person next to me from getting a Big Mac if he doesn't pay for one. It's excludable. They have a counter and the Big Macs are behind the counter, and a person cannot grab that Big Mac legally, at least, without paying money. It is an excludable good. If that person wants a Big Mac, they have to pay for it. And if they don't pay for it, they don't get a Big Mac. They are excluded from being able to consume a Big Mac. Likewise, it's rival in consumption. So if I am consuming a Big Mac, the person next to me is not getting utility from it, even if I give them some of my leftovers, which I wouldn't. So that is a private good. And private goods markets allocate resources super well for private goods because they can establish prices. They can make sure the only people who are getting goods and services are paying the market price, and the people who are consuming goods and services are getting utility at that market price. So private goods, boom, markets, wonderful. Plow. The issue is that there are some goods that we call public goods. that are non-rival and non-exclusive. In other words, there are certain goods that are available to everyone in equal amounts, regardless of if they pay for them or not. All right, and here are some examples: police protection, national defense. Um, and so the issue is, and we'll come back to this, I'm going to show the same, and I know it's not like a big blockbuster video, but the same person who did the Edpuzzle video also has about only like a 3 or 4 minute video about public goods. I think she does a really great job of explaining things. So I'm going to show that video for you. I was going to make an Edpuzzle, but it's not really that long, and students usually understand public goods pretty well. So I'm not going to stress over making this an Edpuzzle video, but I do want you to watch this. And then we're going to come back and revisit the idea of a free rider problem. So here's a video. Um, Again, here's the video that explains sort of public goods. It has, again, I like the way that it goes about it.
Before we get into public goods, it may be useful to take a look at private goods first. Most commodities fall into this second category. If a commodity is excludable, then person A's consumption prevents anyone else from consuming it. Look, if you have a soda and you drink that soda, that prevents anyone else from consuming it. Excludability deals with the quantity of consumption. There's rivalry in consumption if person A's consumption interferes with the quality of consumption for anyone else. Think about that drink again. Even if you do share it, the quality of your consumption is probably diminished. Rivalry deals with the quality of consumption. In the end, who pays for a private good? Well, since you would exclude anyone else from consuming it, and even if they tried to, their quality would be diminished, you, the person who consumes the commodity, would naturally pay for it. What about public goods? If a commodity is non-excludable, then once it's been made available for person A, there's no way to prevent others from using it. And there's non-rivalry in consumption if person A's use in no way detracts from the quality of consumption for anyone else. The classic example of a pure public good is a lighthouse. Not so very long ago, ships didn't have radar, sonar, depth sounders, or even a very reliable schedule. Ships loaded with valuable cargo could arrive along the coast any time of the day or night. Let's say that shipping company A gets tired of losing vessel after vessel of valuable cargo due to ships crashing against the rocks in the dark and sinking to the ocean floor. So company A invests in building a lighthouse so that its ships can make their way safely into port even in the dark. Shipping company B has grown tired of losing cargo too and now realizes that it can take advantage of the fact that company A has built a lighthouse. After all, once the beacon of light is available for A's ships, other ships can't really be prevented from using the signal, it's non-excludable, and 100 ships could see the signal from offshore without decreasing the power or intensity of that signal for anyone else, it's non-rivalrous. The owner of Company A becomes indignant that Company B is free riding on the resources it has built and demands that Company B contribute funds to help pay for the lighthouse. Company B refuses. After all, what would be the point? If A's ships want to use the lighthouse, there's nothing they can do to decrease the signal for B, and really, no way to prevent B from using it even if they don't pay. Company A ends up frustrated and has no wish to use its own resources to build another lighthouse that everyone else would use for free. In the end, who pays for a public good? Well, that's a problem, isn't it? Because of the free ridership issue, public goods tend to be underproduced or not produced at all. As with many market failures, this creates a role for the government. Because no one wants to voluntarily step up to pay for a public good, the government collects taxes from everyone, then distributes those revenues to support public goods. Think about it. Much of what the government provides falls in the category of non-excludable, non-rivalrous goods. Parks, roads, fire service, national defense, and so on. Who pays for a public good? Well, in the end, effectively we all contribute by paying taxes, and then the government provides the goods.
All right, so again, I really like. She's a lot different than I am because she's sort of calm, and I kind of go over all over the place. But I really like the way that she explains some of these economic concepts. The person who does that YouTube video, and and again, what she is explaining again is what we have just talked about, that there are certain goods and services in society that are non-rival and non-exclusive, that no matter no matter what, people are able to use them whether they pay for them or not. And when one person uses them, it doesn't prevent anybody else from getting the same amount of utility from using them. All right, and the lighthouse again is the classic example. All right, if one company, one shipping company builds a lighthouse, all right, every other shipping company is going to benefit without paying for the lighthouse. They're going to get the exact same amount of utility out of the lighthouse as the company that built the lighthouse. So that means that in a private market, very few private companies will produce goods that are non-rival and non-excludable because it creates what we call that free rider problem. That there are people who didn't pay for it that are using it and getting the same utility out of the people who did pay for it. They are what we call free riders, a free rider problem. And because of that, public goods usually are not produced at either they're not produced or they're produced at a quantity that is less than socially optimal. So again, she used some examples: national defense, the police force, police protection. The police are meant to protect an entire community, regardless of whether or not somebody is paying a lot of taxes or little taxes. The idea is that everybody should have the same amount of police protection in a society. So again, police protection is a public good. Public schools are kind of a public good. Public schools can be a little bit rival though, and they can be a little bit excludable. Not by law they can't, but there could be a market for schools that is. Public schools are probably a better example of a positive externality. So anyway, I hope that makes sense. One last thing, another way, if you want one more decent example of what a public good is, a good that is non-rival and non-exclusive, I want you to think of like a 4th of July fireworks at the local city park, all right? Or like, like a balloon fest or what have you. Fireworks in a small community like in Ashland, or I grew up in Galion, we'd have a 4th of July fireworks. You can see fireworks for miles around, unless it's a cold, dark, stormy night. All right. And so it doesn't make sense for, particularly during like 4th of July celebrations, to try to charge for people to come to the park to watch fireworks, because parks are very large areas. It's hard to cordon everything off. It's hard to make sure everybody is paying. So it's very hard to exclude people from watching a fireworks show through making them pay. Likewise, fireworks are non-rival. So it doesn't matter if I'm watching the fireworks by myself or whether I'm surrounded by, 1,000 people watching the fireworks. The utility I am getting out of those fireworks is the same no matter what, which is very different from than like I said, like a Big Mac. All right. When somebody next to me is eating a Big Mac and hands me a Big Mac to finish, I'm like, ooh, that's gross. I'm not getting utility. This is nasty. I got that person's cooties. But when I'm just watching fireworks, their participation in watching them does not change mine at all. All right. Now, it might, like for me, I'm a 6'2", whatever, 5,000-pound man. For the little kid behind me that can't see the fireworks, that's a different story. But for me, I'm, my utility is perfect. Um, so fireworks, local fireworks are a good example of another good that is sort of non-excludable and non-rival. And that's why usually cities and government organizations, city organizations, they usually put on fireworks shows, and you can donate and stuff like that, but very rarely are you going to be charged for a fireworks show. Um, there are some things that some people do try. They try to make certain things more exclusive and more rival, like they might have music for the fireworks show. And if you really want to get, listen to the music, you have to be close to the speakers. So they might have a section that's easily sort of um, cordoned off that they can charge so that you come in and listen to the music. Another great example is like down in Disney World, like they own so much land that if you want to watch any of their fireworks, you actually have to buy a park ticket to be able to get in to see it. So that is more excludable. So there are some exceptions to that some places do try to make fireworks more rival and excludable and can find ways to charge people for certain viewing, but by and large, it's just another good example. So again, public goods. This is one more example, one more thing that that markets without any sort of government intervention usually are not able to provide in a socially optimal amount, simply because because of the free rider problem. All right, so that's that. Tomorrow we're going to wrap it up with information asymmetry. And information asymmetry is sort of why when you grab something, I just found this Snapple. It's why when you grab, I just said that, when you grab this Snapple, you can see all these ingredients, you can see all these things on it, you can see the calorie content, the fat content. This is all in here to try to prevent market failure. The government requires this so that we prevent market failures. So tomorrow we'll talk about information asymmetry. Um, yeah, Snapple, razzle dazzle. All right, everyone, have a great Thursday. I hope you're all well, and be seeing you all soon. All right, talk to you later. Bye.